Good morning and welcome back to Planet Althistory. Today we are going to discuss what if East Germany, the DDR, remained communist. East Germany, or the Deutsche Demokratische Republik, very often called itself the first German peace state, Deutscher Friedensstaat, or the first socialist state on German soil, erster sozialistischer Staat auf deutschem Boden. The DDR defined itself as anti-fascist state, and the constitution also claimed that it was a state of laborers and farmers. This may sound very ridiculous to us nowadays, but knowing the origins of socialism, communism, it isn't surprising that laborers and farmers have been chosen and not other job titles. There were also no big mines in East Germany, and laborers and farmers, they were always seen as working class people. The DDR had a huge problem: resources. There were not many resources to be found. The Soviet Union was not really able to help East Germany with money or investments. And another issue that existed was also the so-called Konsumsozialismus. There is a reason why East Germany had a better standard of life than, let's say, Poland, Romania, or even the Soviet Union. People in East Germany, they had ways of getting information or access to stuff from the West, and they knew that life in the West was in many ways better. Honecker had the vision that East Germany was the 10th strongest industrial nation in the world. But this was only a vision and not the truth. Because in the end of the 70s already, East Germany had many issues with money, loans, credits that they couldn't pay off, and they had to take new loans just to cover the interest rates. What made things worse was that West Germany, the class enemy, even had to borrow their money. It was virtually just only a matter of time until East Germany would collapse anyway. But there are still claims that East Germany only borrowed money from West Germany to show that they would be worthy enough to take credits from other states, such as Japan for instance. But what if all of that changed? What if East Germany remained communist? In this scenario, the German reunification and democratization process with East Germany won't happen. Of course, with the loans of the West, this is impossible to achieve, and less so if East Germany has a lot of debts. A good start would be that Honecker would follow similar policies as, let's say, Ceausescu. While Ceausescu's policies were very radical and made Romanians on average poorer during the 80s, Romania had virtually no debts by the end of the 80s. We could assume that Honecker would try to follow a similar strategy, knowing that people wouldn't be happy about it. A lot of spending would be cut, many subsidies would be cut, people would need to make more lines in order to get certain products. At the same time, the DDR would try to not cheaply sell their production, but they would try to even export more stuff to the West and perhaps even introduce slowly but surely investment options for the West with special economic zones. Would the Soviet Union allow it? That's a very difficult question to answer. But I believe the Soviets in around the 80s would be okay with it. And if Honecker showed Moscow how problematic the financial situation in East Germany was, and knowing that the Soviets also had their issues, well, they would come to some sort of agreement. The Stasi, the police, they would get a higher budget. The army, I think, could gain a better salary, but there wouldn't be more equipment bought. And this would be done for a very good reason. It would be done to prevent more people from escaping. But even with the increase in the budget, or salary actually, and the decrease of the normal budget or equipment budget, East Germany would avoid bankruptcy and I think they could also be able to default on some loans that they made. It would certainly not be to their advantage, but hey, as long as the Soviets still exist, they could just do it without taking any bigger risks from the West. Another important moment that would need to change would be that Schabowski, the number 2 of the SED at the time, would not hold many press conferences in order to improve the image of the regime. Instead, someone like Hans Modrow could be a better candidate in order to improve the image of the regime. As a result, Schabowski would then not make the mistake he made during a press conference, and the people would not go to the inner German border. Still, many people would somehow leave one way or the other, and the regime would open up some options of doing it. Perhaps they would do so by agreeing with their Western counterpart on certain quotas and money, of course, as exchange. In this alternate universe, someone like Thatcher would perhaps convince Bush Senior and Mitterrand that a German reunification would not be a good thing. This could even go so far that Thatcher and Egon Krenz, they could meet up and even make some deals between them, left and right. Perhaps even France could join in, or we could just have a timeline where Kohl would never gain power in West Germany. There is a high chance that with an improved image and a greater hostility towards German reunification, some states they would give East Germany the support it needed. I don't think that East Germany would easily become debtless, of course not. But the finances, they would not be the biggest problem in that moment. The bigger problem would be the economy and the brain drain. Sure, the economy would try to change as well, but just as with North Korea, I don't think we would see a positive change. Or if we see changes, they will be very minor and coming slow. Not only that, but with Czechoslovakia and Poland becoming democracies, East Germany would need to now defend the borders in those areas as well. Plus, Moscow would be for the whole 90s not present in East Germany. And for some years, East Germany, they would be, well, very alone. They would be isolated. China could maybe support East Germany in some ways, but I don't really see East Germany getting a lot of support of China. If East Germany would be very smart, they could play out the French for some years until Putin would finally get power in Russia, and when Putin finally has some stability going on in Russia, we could see that the relations between Russia and East Germany, they would blossom, and the Russian-German friendship, or Soviet-German friendship, well, Russian in that case, would blossom once more. And the army, the soldiers and the tanks, even perhaps the navy, they would return in East Germany. NATO and the European Union, they would now not only have Kaliningrad as a big hole and a big issue, but also East Germany. West Germany would be more militarized, as would be Poland, and Poland would now have fears from all their sides. East Germany would not become a free society, and the transition towards democracy would stagnate and revert even at some time. With the help of Putin, East Germany could get a little bit better standard of life, but it will not get anywhere close where it is right now. The streets, the infrastructure would all be very bad, the population would not really increase, modernization would happen at a very slow rate, but the strategic position of East Germany would be very vital to Russian interests. The US and European diplomacy would sometimes flip-flop around East Germany, sometimes trying to win them over, sometimes condemning them as a rogue state, but East Germany would never become a North Korea-like state. I think they would rather be similar to Belarus or even have a little bit a better image. West Germany, in some way, they would be the winner, because the population would not have such high taxes as they do in OTR. The so-called Soli or Solidaritätszuschlag, the tax for German reunification, would not even exist in this timeline, and thus people would have 5.5% more in their income. The West German political landscape would also be way more moderate than it is nowadays, and parties such as the left and the AfD would never exist in the first place, leaving the West German political landscape in a really boring spot. Egon Krenz would continue to make reforms in East Germany, but even with a reformer like him on top of the state, the DDR would remain unfree and stay a communist state. The Berliner Wall may be changed, some installations could be upgraded or adapted or even be completely removed if the money of the West was high enough. In the early 2000s, the living standards they could increase, and East Germany would be a staunch ally of Russia and later on even China, while trying to keep a good relation with the West, just for the money. People, of course, they would continue to criticize the regime, and we would see revolts and protests every 5 to 10 years, just like in Belarus, for instance. East Germany would be far away from the communist utopia they once tried to build, but they would hang in there for much longer than they actually should. Berlin would remain divided, Trabants they would still be rolling, military parades would be held on German soil, the wall would remain as a time capsule of the Cold War, just like the demilitarized zone in Korea. And perhaps a group like Rammstein would become the most famous East German band. And that's where we leave it for now.
That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed my video. Be sure to like and subscribe, leave a comment, support me also on Patreon, and join my forum, forum.planetalthistory.ga. Until next time on Planet Alt History.